So we're on episode 222 today, Jason.
Okay.
Questions from you. So what are we doing today with our...
Well, so we have the opportunity, all these presentations that we do, some of them local live presentations, many of them webinars, and we get this interaction with people all around the country. And so today what I wanted to do is take a collection of the questions that people have asked us recently and bring those to our podcast listeners.
Awesome. So I have a nice list of questions here. We'll go ahead and start with our first one. And that is, what is the best investment? Wow.
Yeah, the best investment. That's the kind of question. That is the kind of question that gets investment advisors into trouble, actually. People that are licensed to be able to give advice, using the word best and investment, that's dangerous territory, actually. But I do have two recommendations. The first one is wisdom. This is the reason I shared the book of Proverbs this morning, because the book of Proverbs tells us to seek wisdom. And what's amazing about the book of Proverbs is that it has survived thousands of years, and it is called the Book of Wisdom. It is a collection of teachings from wise people that has survived for thousands of years. So if you think, even if you don't believe in God or you don't believe in the Bible, but you're just saying, I'd like more wisdom, it'd probably be good to start with a set of teachings that has survived a very long time and is still incredibly relevant today. So the first best investment is wisdom, to invest in wisdom. The second best investment is peace of mind. Sometimes peace of mind can be an incredible investment. And the question becomes, well, how do you gain more peace of mind? And I kind of sound like a broken record, but I think a relationship, personally with me, I believe a relationship with Jesus is what gives you clarity, confidence, and freedom. But when it comes to peace of mind of your finances, maybe you just need to understand if the numbers are going to work. For a lot of people, that's how they gain peace of mind. And ultimately, that comes from having a plan. And a good plan is going to start with understanding your spending, because especially if you're doing retirement planning, retirement is an exercise in cash flow, making sure your cash flow matches up with your expenses. Emilia, sometimes people head into retirement and they don't give this a whole lot of thought. They just go for it. And it's amazing to me that people are willing to risk everything without just a little bit of due diligence, a little bit of prudence up front. It just seems to me like if you want to not be in a state of chaos, a state of worry, a state of fear, that it makes sense to do a little bit of planning up front. It's like the biggest financial decision of your life is to stop working and transition to retirement. Yes. It's probably a good idea to make sure that that's going to be okay, so you don't have to worry about this anymore.
That's good. Yeah. Two really good investments, wisdom and peace of mind. I like that. So we have a next question here. What rate of return should we assume for future returns?
Yes. So this comes because people are trying to crunch the numbers, and it's a good question. It's a good thing to be thinking about rates of return, and we should assume that rates of return are probably going to be a little bit muted from where they have been in the past. But I think an even better way to do the planning, Emilia, is instead of focusing on the rate of return, instead of focusing on averages, focus on the outcome. What is the end result? What is it that we want to have happen? And then once you understand what the end result is, then you can back into the numbers. Then you can go back and you can say, well, what rate of return is needed to achieve this outcome? And so if you focus on the outcome, then it makes it much easier to understand what you need versus what you want. See, everybody says they want 10 to 12%, their money to be growing 10 to 12%. But I'll never forget the time I met with a gentleman where he had a lot of anxiety in his financial life, wanting to know that he and his wife were going to be okay. And when we sat down and crunched the numbers, what we found was that if his money was growing at about 2% per year, he was going to be okay. So once you understand what that hurdle is that you need to overcome, then you can start designing a plan to achieve whatever that rate of return is. Unfortunately, what too many people do is they put the cart before the horse and they focus on rates of return because that's the exciting part. That's the investing, that's seeing your money grow, that's getting those soldiers out there working for you every single day. But in retirement, really, ultimately, at the end of the day, people just want to know they're going to be okay. And so you focus on the outcome instead of the averages.
Yeah, there's that peace of mind.
Yeah.
All right. So the next question is a question a lot of people ask about, but what is a fair fee to pay?
Yeah. So maybe another way to answer that question or to ask that question is if I told you the fee was going to be high, but the outcome was going to be guaranteed, or if I said the fee was going to be very low, but the outcome was questionable, which of those two options would you choose?
I would want a guaranteed outcome.
But even if you knew the fee was going to be high, you would want to know that the outcome was guaranteed. Yeah. See, again, this is an area where people focus so much on the fee that they disregard the outcome. Now, fees are important, and I want people to understand we are an advocate of helping our clients keep their fees as low as possible. But again, the focus needs to be on the outcome. I'm reminded about 22 years ago, we were living in Alaska, and I was working for the state of Alaska at the time, and I get a phone call. My wife was calling me, and my wife never called me at work. This was back before we had cell phones. So this was,
Yeah.
and it wasn't appropriate to talk to your spouse at work on the work phone. You just didn't do that. But my wife was calling for me, and so I answered it, and she says, Jason, my mom was at home. She fell and she hit her head, and we're in the ambulance. We're on our way down to the hospital. Can you meet us down there? And we were living in Juneau, Alaska, which is a pretty small community. I went to my boss at the time and I said, I need to go to the hospital. And they said, oh, absolutely go. So I get in my car, I drive down to the hospital and see my mother-in-law. And she indeed fell and hit her head on this chair. And so she had this blood that was kind of dried on the side of her face. And I said, how are you doing? And she said, oh, I got this terrible headache. My head hurts so bad. And after about an hour or two of being there, they did some more tests. They did, I think it was a CAT scan, and they came back and they said, your mother-in-law has, her brain is bleeding. She has an aneurysm that didn't burst, but it's bleeding. Wow. And they said, she's going to need brain surgery. And they said, we don't do brain surgery in Juneau, Alaska. So they said, you have a choice to make where you can either fly her here or fly her there. And I'll never forget this, Emilia, because it was like one of these defining moments. My wife and I this happened on our 1-year wedding anniversary. So our 1-year wedding anniversary, we're in the emergency room with my mother-in-law, and my father-in-law was out of town. And so Becky and I, we're having to make this decision. I'm sitting there looking this doctor in the eyes, and I remember he had blue eyes, and I asked him this next question. I said, who is the cheapest brain surgeon in the world?
Oh, Jason.
Of course I didn't answer. That's not what I said, right? In these moments where something important's about to happen, the question I really asked him was, who is the best brain surgeon in the world? I didn't care if it meant flying 4 hours longer. We were going to go to the best, because when I'm having to make this decision, and for me, this was a big deal. This was like the first time in my life where I felt, man, I was having to make a life or death decision for somebody else's benefit. So again, don't make the conversation, not when you're talking about the biggest, most important financial decision of your life, about the lowest fee. That is a ridiculous way. It'd be like me asking for the lowest cost brain surgeon for the most important decision of my life. That would be ridiculous.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that story. So moving on with some of our next questions here. What has been the average return you have achieved?
Yeah, so that, again, this was somebody that had contacted us, and they were interested in potentially having us put together a plan for them. And I know that we're not the best fit for everybody out there. So our process is designed to ask them questions and for them to ask us questions so that we can decide whether it makes sense for us to engage in a long-term relationship to work together. And one of the questions that they came back to us in that early part of the meeting was, what's been the average rate of return that you've earned? And it's such a dangerous question, Emilia. And people who, see, as an investment advisor, we know the number that people want to hear. And we have investments that range the spectrum from, we have some people that want to be conservative, so we have conservative options. We have some people that want to be aggressive, and so we have aggressive options. And of course, there's a rate of return associated with conservative or aggressive. So when somebody asks that question and they want to know what rate of return, but we haven't done the plan yet, we don't know what rate of return is appropriate for them. We don't understand what their risk tolerance is. For me to come out with a rate of return and give them a number at that point would be totally inappropriate. It's just totally the wrong question to ask. Again, focus on the outcome instead of the averages.